Welcome to the show and a brand new week. IB Nation Sports Talk. He's Vince. I'm Sean. Yes, I mean TD4ND. We had to finish our hot dogs before we could get this thing going. Had to get a little energy in us here tonight.
I mean, if you want an 80-yard run, that's how we operate. All right.
That's right. Couple things right off the bat before we get into some Notre Dame football. And I see Michael Hahn is in here, and it's funny because Jesse and I were texting about Michael earlier today. Noted New York Giants fan. He was wondering, we were both wondering if Mike would be in the chat. He got in early. Let's just say, I'll put this up first. Okay, Sean, why is, hold it, not that one. I'll get to that here in just a second. Tommy says, can y'all at least backload the Dallas content to the end of the show? And I swear, since it's Vince tonight, I was not planning on getting deep into any Cowboys content. I was planning on, Jesse and I at the end of Rapid Fire tomorrow. Yes, so I will keep it at that. And, quite honestly, if Michael and Tommy hadn't brought up the Cowboys stuff, I honestly would not have brought up Cowboys stuff even this early. Even as giddy and as happy as I was, I would have not brought up the Cowboys stuff this early. So
the only NFL that I was planning on talking about is my hatred of the quarterback who's playing for New York tonight.
Yes, that's right. Aaron Rodgers tonight.
Correct.
And that's who Dallas plays next week as well. They play the Jets next week. So we can all be together tonight. Now, before we get deeper into Notre Dame stuff, and I'm trying to adjust my volume here a little bit. For some reason, it's dropped a little bit. Tommy wants to know why the Friday show is not done live. Scheduling conflict? Is there an actual reason, or just that you guys don't want to do it live? Number one, there's a boss of this organization, and what the boss says goes. Now, there are conversations about some different things, but
sure,
the boss says the way we're doing things right now is the way the boss wants things done. Am I wrong on that?
You are not wrong on that. Yeah. And we did a pregame show live last year, and we're doing a pregame show again this year. We're just not doing it live on Saturday.
Right.
We didn't have a Friday show, did we, in the past?
We did rapid fire during the season last year. We did not start doing anything live until we did rapid fire. And the reason we started doing that rapid fire show on Fridays is because the football season was over and we weren't doing the Saturday countdown to kickoff anymore. And I said, hey, Brian, what do you think about we just do a rapid fire thing on Friday? He's like, yeah, sure. So here's the deal. A couple of different things. One, we did a live Saturday morning countdown to kickoff last year. And ultimately what Brian decided was because early morning, the whole thing on Saturdays, between the viewership that we got live and the fact that it was on game day, and obviously we're covering the game on game day and all these different things, it wasn't worth necessarily doing a live show Saturday mornings.
Right.
So he said, let's just record it in advance. That way the podcast drops. We'll still post the video. People can watch it. And now, again, especially Vince, now he's got a lot of things, with being an administrator at a high school, things going on Fridays. And so it's just the way we're doing it right now, the YouTube is actually getting probably twice as many views as we were getting when we were doing it live Saturday morning last year, because we're putting it up earlier. Right. We're just not doing it live, and we're not doing it live again because Brian doesn't want it live because he's got his show going on. If we did our show live, we would have to do it so early that there would always be overlap with Brian, and there would just always be issues with that.
Major issues.
We were getting issues when we were doing a live show at 5:00, so there's no way we can do it. So So we appreciate everybody watching. Speaking of which, I usually avoid like going to the YouTube comments. I don't know how much you read the YouTube comments on any of the shows.
Any of them, pretty much. Yeah. So
I typically avoid it just because, I mean,
That's
how
fair.
it is. It's
That's
like
fair.
I don't want to deal with any of the BS and the negativity, but I did get some chuckles this weekend because we had some NC State fans watch.
Oh, did we now?
Show. Did I not send you those comments?
I don't think so. No, I don't remember seeing them.
So first of all, if you happen to be an NC State fan still lingering around, well, God bless you. Here you are.
Right. You're welcome to hang out. I mean,
after the fact, that's right. You're always welcome here. But thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone for watching, but especially them because, based on their comments, they spent some time watching the show and they weren't very happy with some of the stuff that we said. But and like, if you're an NC State fan, again, like, God bless you because you're an NC State football fan. And no matter what, I congratulate you for your loyalty because you're always going to be the fan of basically a mid-ACC team. And the best you're hoping for is a chance to just get in a conference championship game. And I'm not saying that as like, I'm not like throwing big shade at you. Like,
it's just a fact.
That's just a fact, right?
Yeah.
But these guys got all tweaked off because, they said when we started talking about the presumed home field advantage, and like this was becoming a big thing, all this, remember the home field advantage, Carter Finley Stadium, and, all this different stuff. And we were basically discounting the home field advantage of North Carolina State, even though they had won 18 of their last 20 home games and all this different stuff. And they had won, what was it, like 23 straight non-conference home games. Great. Well, that turned into, well, you guys are really being cocky about this, like, and then it was like, well, you lost to Marshall and Stanford at home last year. So what kind of home field advantage do you have? Like this big false equivalency. Like, just because Notre Dame lost a couple games at home, that doesn't make your home field advantage any more a home field advantage, right?
Those two things are they don't have anything to do with each other. Like that wouldn't even have been my argument. I would never compare one team's home field advantage to Notre Dame's because, to be honest with you, most of the time, it's not a big advantage for Notre Dame to be at home outside of the fact that they're just not traveling and things like that. I think the night games are a little bit different than the day games and things of that nature. But I wouldn't have compared the two. I think the only point you and I were making is it really that raucous of an environment to go into at NC State? Like, is that really the difference maker? I mean, I don't think it.
Well, like Andrew says, Brian was complimentary of North Carolina State all week. And again, like it was posted on the IB countdown to kickoff, and it was stuff that we were specifically talking about because I said, look, you've won 18 of your last 20 at home, or they've won 18 of their last 20 at home. But guess what? One of those two losses was last year to an awful Boston College team that Notre Dame obliterated at home at the end of the season. And so, like, you're hanging your hat on this big win streak. Look, great. You've beaten like Furman and all these schools that, Charleston Southern and schools like that. Of those 18 wins that they had at home, 3 were against ranked teams. One of them was over a ranked Liberty team during the COVID season. Like, when has Liberty been ranked since then? Like, and again, we were talking about the home field advantage. It's just another ACC home stadium. That's all it is. And again, it's like people were treating it like Notre Dame was going to Tuscaloosa or to Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, like places where there's actually, home field advantages.
Like a legit home field advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. That was my point.
We did talk about it, and I think it was like a scale of 1 to 10 situation. It's like, how, what is your worry about the home field advantage? It's like a 2, like a 1. Like it's not even remotely an issue. Like, if I was going to rank the potential pitfalls for Notre Dame in this game, the home field advantage wasn't one of them. I'm sorry. Even go ahead.
I was going to say, Tim says they were rocking at the beginning of the game. Yes, just like Virginia Tech when they play Enter Sandman, which I think I brought up. It's like, big deal. Like, because to me, one series into the game, and even after Notre Dame went 3 and out, they might as well have been playing in a tobacco field somewhere because it did not come across to me as any raucous environment. You know, you can be wound up all you want before the game starts, but what happens afterwards? It never seemed like any kind of – the team was good, and I wasn't discounting what Notre Dame was going to get from NC State as a team. It was the environment specifically we were talking about. And I think that the way it played out, the whole thing backed up our whole argument. It was not a home field advantage.
And
it was not a decided home field advantage.
If the fans are such passionate and they're so good at, the home at home and all that, where did they go after the weather delay?
Right.
Because they all went home is the answer. And, they slowly filtered back in. But by the time the stadium became 80-90% full again, game was over, guys. I mean, I hate to break it to you. The game was over. And so if you want to blame that on your fans, then so be it. But why wouldn't it be a raucous home situation when Notre Dame's coming into town and your defense is flying all over the place and, making Sam Hartman look human for half a quarter? Okay, cool. But they got to keep that up for the entire game. And they didn't do that. And Notre Dame won by 4 touchdowns. I'm sorry, that last touchdown was garbage. And frankly, they gave them another touchdown by way of penalties. So, NC State's a good team. They're a good defense. They are. Their offense is putrid right now. Their defense is going to have to win them games. Notre Dame took advantage of it. Sorry. I mean, I'm sorry we hurt their feelings. I know the society that we're in these days, people get their feelings hurt. I'm sorry.
Well, Vince, I did notice they didn't come back after the game because if somehow NC State had won that game, they would have been coming back and there would have been a lot more chirping going on. They did not come back, and that's I think we rested our case, really.
Yeah. I mean, all you got to – I mean, it's like when we were in high school and you're beating the crap out of a team and they're still chirping. You just point at the scoreboard. Scoreboard.
Exactly it. And again, like the whole, like saying that we were being cocky, like to me, that kind of insinuates that like I was being some sort of homer in this whole thing. And I think if anything, there would be people who would say that I'm not homer enough, a lot of times. So,
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure, I'm going to have to double check, but I'm pretty sure the actual ending of, what happened in real life was a lot more of a butt whooping than I predicted, if I remember correctly. I think more than all of us, because we all said 17 points, which was weird. We all said 17 points. I said 35-17. It was 45-24. So the margin was even bigger than I said it was going to be.
Than we predicted it was going to be.
So, how are we being cocky? Notre Dame went out and I guess was cocky because they blew us out of the water in what we predicted.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I thought it was hilarious.
And hilarious. Yes, I was going to add that.
Add your adjective. That's right.
Yep.
Well, I think the key word coming out of Saturday is resiliency. Marcus Freeman brought it up post-game. I asked him about his team's resiliency at his press conference today, and here's what he had to say.
I think you always try to put your players in difficult situations to see how they respond, right? And it can be a situation that they know is coming or they don't know is coming. And, something when Bayless was here, we worked, in depth about it. Don't tell how much they're running. I don't want them to know. I just want to make sure they just continue to get back to the line and leadership emerges and they just go and they do whatever we ask them to do. And so that to me is a reflection of that, is that, no matter what the score is, no matter it's a 7-point game and North Carolina State has the ball in our territory, the ability to just focus in on that rep and not look at the finish line. It's the same thing in a summer conditioning period, right? If you tell them, hey, we got 10 half-built gassers. Okay, all right, I'm going to coast and try to get to 10. we can just say, hey, you're on the line. We'll stop when we're done. I think it gives them the ability to just stay locked in the moment and truly not look at the finish line, because when things get really, really tough and you're just looking at the finish line, man, that's where you see guys, tap out, or guys that say, man, it's too difficult. But if you just stay in the moment, I think that's where you'll see a resilient bunch of guys.
And I think, Vince, it's really as the visiting team, there are inherent disadvantages that go with what happened on Saturday, road locker room and the whole thing, and the weather and everything else. Like the home team, they've got a heck of a lot better locker room. I mean, just look at Notre Dame Stadium. Notre Dame's got a better locker room than the visitors do, and just everything else that comes with it. Going through all they went through and being able to bounce back, things weren't going up to par offensively early on, and they're able to come out of there with a win. And I just think that when you look at last year's team and the fact that they did lose games to Marshall and, to Stanford, the way that they lost them at home, all those different things. And like you hear Marcus Freeman kind of talking about, he was sort of talking about how you build and how you can test these guys, resiliency and that kind of thing. And I think it really speaks to where they are as a program just 1 year later, not even a full year later since that Stanford debacle, the fact that they're able to overcome these things, go on the road and do what they were able to do on Saturday.
No doubt about it. I mean, I love the fact that this team hit a wall of adversity and they busted right through it. I mean, let's be honest. I don't know if teams in the past, in the recent history, would have done that. And that includes last year, to be honest with you, because they hit adversity early on in the season with Marshall and later on in the season against Stanford and against Cal and some things like that. They hit those walls and they didn't do a great job of getting over them. This year's team is different. This year's team hit some adversity. I mean, they were held to 3 points in the entire first quarter. They looked bad. There was 3 and outs. There was punts. They had twice as many punts in the first quarter as they had the entire season leading up to the game. So there was a huge wall of adversity in front of them. They blew right through it, and it started out with that 80-yard run, obviously, by Estime, but then they continued to do so. The offense continued to click. The offensive coordinator continued to make plays and call the right plays and set plays up and do all of these different things. It's a different team, Sean. This is a different group.
I agree. And, again, like you can talk about Marcus Freeman's resiliency as well, because it's one thing for a coach, and we've talked about this before, the way Marcus Freeman has been introspective in his, I guess, it's almost like a year and a half now that he's actually been the head coach when you include the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma State. But like the way it's one thing to say last year when you lose to Marshall and you lose to Stanford, okay, we're going to change the messaging, or, okay, I'm going to look at the way I'm doing this and I'm going to change this about the way I'm doing it. It's one thing to say you're going to do it, and it's, still another thing to do it, but it's yet another thing for those changes to actually matter. Like you can change things all you want, but they don't always work. And now look at where they are. Just a little bit more, again, not quite a year from that Stanford loss, and all these different little things he's been willing to do and put these changes into motion and have them actually come to fruition to mean something in the long run.
Absolutely. I know it sounds very simple, but Marcus Freeman has learned from his mistakes. He has learned with his, because we talked about, he's going to be learning while he's a head coach, right? Because he's a first-time head coach. There's learning on the job and all that. He's actually learning. Like, he's not just making the mistakes.
Learning and doing.
Yes, that's exactly right. He's putting plans into action based on past experiences, both positive and negative. And he's growing from those different things. And look, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I mean, this is the Marcus Freeman that we've seen since the minute he stepped on campus at Notre Dame after that opening game against Florida State where he had the wrong defensive call and they had that big touchdown. The very next day he's in the meeting room with the defense. He's like, that one's on me. And it never happened again. And he goes, it won't happen again. And it didn't. he learns from his mistakes, and he's doing that as a head coach. And you can see it. It's permeates the entire program, top to bottom, coaches, leadership, regular part of the team.
Okay, so two-part thing here from Tommy that he's got. One, how much of the slow start do you put on all of the variables, weather, start time, etc.? And then he followed up, do you think Hartman had a version of PTSD from prior games against NC State of sorts that he had to get over to settle in? And I'll answer that second part first. I don't think it was necessarily PTSD. I will say, while we gave credit to NC State's defense and Jesse put up his whiteboards on how to go about attacking it and stuff like that, I'll just say that when you look at Sam Hartman's past against NC State, that's one thing that maybe we discounted a little bit. I don't think it all had to do with, well, it's Wake Forest and he didn't have a running game, he didn't have an offensive line, some of those things. Like, then that defense was a good defense, and a defense that I think can cause a quarterback, it's not as easy to diagnose maybe as we gave it credit for going in. And I think that's played a part in where Sam Hartman was with the 6 interceptions going into that game. And again, he didn't have any interceptions, didn't make any horrible throws or anything like that. There were times he held onto the ball a little bit long, and I think that part of that had to do with what he was seeing and or not seeing from that NC State defense, the way they're able to disguise some things.
Well, I think one of the big problems early on in the game was, he had to rush a lot of his throws and a lot of his reads because the offensive line played like garbage to start off the game. I mean, they did. NC State threw the kitchen sink at Notre Dame. Period. End of discussion. Like, they were bringing pressures from all over the place. They were bringing more than Notre Dame could block. And when they didn't bring more than they could block, Notre Dame just wasn't blocking guys. And so Sam Hartman had to rush. And so Sam Hartman had to move around a little bit more than he's accustomed to behind this Notre Dame offensive line. And after they came back from the weather delay, I think, the offensive line still made mistakes, don't get me wrong, but they played harder. They played a little bit more aggressive, things like that. They were making aggressive mistakes, which is a lot better than what was going on before the weather delay. So, I think Sam Hartman rushed a few things, but I think he was forced to rush a few things as well. So I think it's a combination of the two. But once he settled in and once the game plan continued to evolve, I think things got a lot better because, yes, he was running into a heavy box and those play calls annoyed the crap out of me early on in the game. But then it was very clear later on in the game that he was having the same formation and he was running things off of what he was doing earlier.
Right.
And it worked to it like a charm. So it's like watching it live, it's like, man, what are we doing? And then watching it back, it's like, oh, well, this set up this later on. And so it actually made a lot of sense. So.
Yeah. And again, look, we talked about how Jesse, especially about how he thought that Notre Dame running the ball specifically could go up against that, because even though you have only a 3-man front, you don't have a massive nose guard, you do have all those stand-up linebackers. They showed that they could clog those run lanes if you tried to run it, right up the middle between the guards, basically A gaps and somewhat B gaps, I guess. And when they went outside, which is what Jess kind of thought the key to success was going to be, that's when they had more success, when they were getting it outside the tackles. They still didn't do a whole lot of that, but in the end, Notre Dame had Audric Estime. So it's like, I mean, now they had
stays and
now, well, I'm talking about the run game specifically, but Jadarian Price, I mean, he came in and gave them some quality.
Oh, he was
as well
shoelace tackle away from busting a long one at one point. I mean, they've got so much talent there, and I mean, how about the drive of Jeremiah Love and how he runs the ball? I mean, that's your 1-2-3 punch right there. And it's,
by the way,
awesome.
Reggie Brooks, Notre Dame great himself, played with some other greats in his time. Split some carries with some other great running backs like Jerome Bettis and Rodney Culver and Lee Becton and some others. Reggie is going to be with me at the start of tomorrow's show. So I look forward. I always love talking about running backs with Reggie Brooks because he holds that standard pretty high, and he doesn't usually mince a whole lot of words when he starts talking about those guys. So he'll tell you what he thinks about the running backs. He'll tell you what he thinks about those offensive linemen and the way they're blocking up front. And I'm looking forward to talking to Reggie tomorrow. He's going to be on the show. So
love it. Getting them good guests.
Yes, that's right. I'm going to save some of these receivers questions because we have in rapid fire some specific receiver stuff that we're going to get into. So we'll save a little bit of that for when we talk about that. I am curious, Vince, what you thought. They're up, what was it, 35-17? Was that the score? Or was it 38-7? 35-17?
35.
Kill shot. Holden stays, a little play action downfield, and they get another touchdown late in the game. What did you think about going for that kill shot the way they did?
Freaking loved it. Loved it. It was like, it's about stinking time, because in the past it would have been, all right, 13 personnel, run it between the tackles. Let's run out the clock. We don't want to embarrass anybody. We don't want to do anything to make people mad at me. No, you go and you put your foot on their throat and you step down. And that's exactly what they did. And I loved it. It's fantastic.
I did too. And what did we see from Brian Kelly when he got in those situations? Well, let's downshift, and I'm going to be the nice guy. I'm not going to run up the score. And then, we had to hear, remember the halftime speech, where I'm tired of being the nice guy. Well, quit being the nice guy.
Yeah.
If that's how you actually think of yourself as the nice guy, quit being the nice guy. Go for the kill. Like, leave no doubt on the field. Like, there really wasn't that much to it. And I love, there you go, Chi-Town. I just completely agree. We took the words out of each other's mouths. Leave no doubt. And that's exactly what it comes down to. I love this shift in mentality from Marcus Freeman, Jared Parker, whoever it is, that you're going to keep doing your thing. You're going to keep running your offense, and you're not going to let it be as close as it needs to be. You're not going to wring out those wins at the end. I love the mentality.
Yep, I do too. I absolutely love it. And I love the fact, I go back to the pregame speech by Marcus Freeman that he gave the guys before Tennessee State. It's like, you show respect to these guys by playing your butts off, by playing as hard as you can the entire game. That's how you show respect to your opponent. Yes. Why is that a novel concept in South Bend when you're playing football? I don't understand it. Okay. Finally, there's a head coach at Notre Dame that understands that, and I am ecstatic about it.
Down with it.
Yep.
All the way. All right, so end of half. We get another Sam Hartman, end of half. Less than a minute, 2-minute drive. And here's Freeman on his use of timeouts at the end of halves.
I've been aggressive when the other team has had the ball and calling timeouts, because I believe if we have a chance to get the ball in our offensive hands with no matter how much time, probably if it's more than 30 seconds, I'm going to call timeout so we can get the ball in our offensive hands and let them get a chance to run a 2-minute operation. And so I was pleased with the way they did that.
So, Vince, the last two games, and you can go back to the end of the Navy game or the end of the first half as well. End of the first half, last two games, Tennessee State last week, NC State this week. 9 plays, 8 completions, 142 total yards, 2 touchdown passes by Sam Hartman. And those 2 touchdown drives covering 142 yards have taken place in a grand total of 1 minute and 8 seconds. So what do you think? Were you happy with Marcus Freeman's usage of the timeouts at the end of the first half this time?
Well, I want to steal something that Sean Davis was talking about in the postgame show. I believe it was Sean Davis. He said, look, he goes, we have seen the evolution of Marcus Freeman before our very eyes. He said, he's out there calling timeouts to save time on the clock for his offense while arguing with the referees
about Riley Mills,
and the hands to the face thing. I mean, he's pulling double duty. He's got.
You talk about presence of mind.
Yes,
because there are a lot of people. Once that blood starts going to your brain, and you get into that kind of argument where you're trying to plead your case for your guy, it's like you forget about everything else that's going on around you.
Exactly.
And here he is. And by the way, I love how Fred was that when Fred Hale, the interim strength guy, is like, come on, coach, let's get back off the field. He's kind of like trying to shoo him off. And by the way, Jesse was like, is that Matthias Farley? That guy looks like no, that's
he does a little bit.
He does look a little bit like Matthias. But all this craziness is going on, and he still has the presence of mind to use the timeouts the proper way, get his team the ball back, and then boom, the next thing you know, here's another less than 1 minute drive downfield for a touchdown. Three plays.
We learned, or I guess it was reiterated. Number one, Marcus Freeman has a lot of faith in the offense in the 2 minute operation, as he called it, right? We that got reiterated to us because of last game and this game. Number two, he's got tremendous confidence in the kicking game for special teams. Tremendous confidence, right? So we're learning things about who Marcus Freeman is and what kind of weapons he wants to use. And if he has any opportunity to give the ball to Sam Hartman and Jared Parker the last couple of minutes of a half or the game, he's going to take it.
I want to be fair, again, because we beat up on Brian Kelly when it's time to beat up on Brian Kelly. And I mean, let's be honest. Any time is a good time to beat up on Brian Kelly at this point, right? So, we don't hold back when it's time to beat up on Brian Kelly. But like Josh says, use of his timeouts was something we never saw under Kelly. If Brian Kelly had Sam Hartman as the quarterback, do you think he's doing the Brian Kelly never had Hartman as the quarterback?
That's fair.
Basically. He never had, you can still knock Brian Kelly because again, we've knocked his quarterback recruiting. It's on him that he never had that kind of quarterback, but at the same time, he never had that guy. So do you think if he had Sam Hartman, he's using the same strategy, I guess? Can we give him, just a little bit there? What do you think?
I would hope so. I would hope so. That's the best thing I can say. I think, Brian Kelly does have a ton of experience. I don't remember, and I could be misremembering, right? But I don't remember him just butchering end of game opportunities as far as clock management and stuff like that. I don't remember that being one of his major issues, to be honest. Right. And so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he would have done that with a quarterback like Sam Hartman.
Yeah, Joe.
And try to be nice here.
Wait. Hartman lives in the aisle that BK said he didn't shop in.
I mean, technically he doesn't, because Hartman was a 3-star quarterback coming.
I was going to say,
that's exactly
Hartman
the kind
was a 3-star who's playing like a 6-star.
Yeah, right, he's exactly the kind of quarterback that Brian Kelly would try to recruit, by the way.
Yeah.
But the difference is he wouldn't have been developed into the quarterback that he is today.
Yeah, exactly. The difference is he'd have one good year, and then the next 2 years he would never live up to that standard, and then he would have transferred someplace else, most likely, to finish off his career. That's the difference, I think. That's a great point.
Correct.
So, defense. I mean, great defense all the way around. Great defensive game plan. They didn't, get home a lot on Brennan Armstrong. And for the season now, they have 4 sacks through 3 games, but they also have 5 interceptions. So here's Marcus Freeman talking about lack of sacks, but you also have created a lot of turnovers and you have good pass efficiency defense. So is that worth the trade-off if you're not getting home on the quarterback?
If it generates interceptions and great pass efficiency defense, I'm great with it. We kind of calculate he was getting the ball out of his hands around 4 seconds, which isn't a lot of time to get a sack. I know we hit him, I think, double digits, right? We got some QB hurries, but I know everybody looks, and even Coach Wash, I have to talk to Coach Wash, don't get frustrated with the numbers. You know, we can sometimes be outcome driven. What is the number of sacks? Like, let's look at how many times we hit it. We hit the quarterback, we affected him with our coverages, and really look at the interceptions that are a result of the pressure you got on him. We were very strategic in how we wanted to rush this quarterback. We could not be out of control and just free rush this guy. We wanted to create games, pass rush games, that forced him to do certain things. And so I'm really pleased with the execution and the outcome of what happened. I know the sacks, the numbers weren't what we all aspire to have, but the outcome in terms of the interceptions, in terms of the pass efficiency was exactly what we needed.
I mean, personally, Vince, this game specifically, I'm not like that upset about the lack of sacks, especially when you get 3 interceptions and you set your offense up in plus territory. But now, again, one game is Navy, which ironically Josh Burnham got his first career sack against, of all teams, Navy. But at the same time, you've got some pressures on the quarterback, but you're not getting home. So what do you think? Are you good with where they are as long as you're getting pressures and you're forcing turnovers?
I think at the end of the day, you still want them to get home on some of those. I think you would love to get, any quarterback and especially a mobile one on the ground. I mean, that's what I would want. And it was difficult to nitpick how the defense played, obviously, on Saturday. There's no doubt about that. Matt. But they did make him uncomfortable. They did have him throwing off platform. They did have him escaping the pocket, not when he wanted to, right? I mean, so they did put a lot of pressure on him, which did generate 3 interceptions. And it generated him throwing 43% completion percentage. Now, some of those were drops. I get that. But anytime you can hold a quarterback to sub 50% and those 3 picks, that's a pretty stinking good day. And I kind of broke this down yesterday. He had like 260 yards passing, but 87 of those yards came in the fourth quarter. And this game was over.
Like the yards, very irrelevant. I mean, especially when you look at, again, when you look at the actual pass efficiency, though, he was 22 of 47 to get those 260 yards, and he threw 3 interceptions.
Right. And more importantly, he ran for what I believe was 26 yards. And that's, that was the big thing coming into this. It's like, okay, you've got, he's a dual threat and all this other stuff. He's 12 attempts for 26 yards. Now, he was sacked 1 time for 7 yards. Okay. So 11 attempts for 33 yards. That's 3 yards a carry. He didn't hurt you. He did not hurt you with his legs.
Yeah. Yeah. And Anthony brings up a good point. Notre Dame did have a pretty good amount of reserves in late in the game as well when he hit some of those.
So, I mean, they did a great job against him. A great job, because we all knew what their offense was. It was Brennan Armstrong and 10 guys. And they shut down Brennan Armstrong, period.
We compared it a little bit to Caleb Williams last year in the USC game, and we were talking on the Countdown to Kickoff show. We had the over-unders for the game. Armstrong's over-under rushing total on the Vegas sports books was 35.5 yards. Caleb Williams had exactly 35 rushing yards against Notre Dame last year in that game. Now, what felt like more, why? Because of his ability to extend plays, ejecting from the pocket, rolling out, doing whatever to avoid pressure. So it wasn't that Caleb Williams necessarily ran for a bunch of yards, but his elusiveness is what made the difference in that game. That's something that Brennan Armstrong was not. Even though he wasn't running for a lot of yards, he was not extending plays with his legs, and he was throwing a lot of incomplete passes. Now, his receivers let him down a couple of times as well.
No doubt.
But even so, I mean,
the difference in the game. I mean, it just wasn't like there were a couple of times where he was on target and the guys just dropped it, period. But again, he still had to throw the ball 47 times.
Yeah.
I think it was 5.5 yards per attempt. That's awful. Like those are awful numbers. And we were talking about it, and upon further review last night, that would have ranked, like if that was their season average, 5.5 yards, that would have ranked them 127th in NCAA.
Well,
those are terrible numbers.
Armstrong had a passer rating of 94.6 in the game. Sam Hartman's passer rating, 217.6. I mean,
There you go.
Talk about difference in the game. 2 sixth-year guys, by the way, played in that game.
Right.
Okay, we're going to come back to some more specific game stuff. I want to get to some of the injury updates Marcus Freeman gave in case maybe some people missed those. J.D. Bertrand, who left the game Saturday in concussion protocol to start the week. Marcus Freeman says he'll be doing non-contact stuff tomorrow. He's doing much better, kind of wait and see right now. Vince, how would you approach Bertrand this week with concussion protocol, considering you've got Ohio State next week?
That he can throw on a red jersey and send in signals. Like, there's no reason for him to take the field against Central Michigan. None. I mean, the only thing that would benefit him is he'd be able to rack up a bunch of tackles in the first half while he still plays. I mean, look, call me cocky, NC State fans. That's fine. J.D. Bertrand shouldn't be playing more than a half of football on Saturday. And I'm sorry, you don't need to put him in the game for a half of football. You need J.D. Bertrand 2 Saturdays from now on September 23rd. That's where you need J.D. Bertrand. If he doesn't play, I don't have a whole lot of faith that Notre Dame can win that game. And so you don't need him to win the game against Central Michigan.
I agree.
Slide Jack Kaiser right on in.
That's what I'm saying.
They won't miss a beat against Central Michigan. He needs to be healthy. Yeah, he needs to be healthy for 2 weeks from now.
Hopefully by the second half, a bigger dose of Drake Bowen or something like that,
Exactly.
I agree. Devin Ford, on the other hand, finishing his concussion protocol. He is expected to be back this week, so that's good news after missing last week.
Curious as to see what his role will be. It's kind of a Wally Pipp situation on the kick return, I think. And
I think so too.
We'll see what happens. I think Jeremiah Love picked up a lot of his carries in this last game and looked pretty good. So let's see how it plays out.
I mean, Jeremiah Love has really, there's only the one play I can think of that he hasn't looked good so far. That was when he missed the blitz pickup against Navy. Other than that, very impressive. Pretty much every time you see him see the field. Gabe Rubio still out this week. Nothing real definitive on when he'll be back, but it won't be this week. Eli Raridan, in the meantime, another tight end. And, of course, he tore his ACL last October. And he was practicing during training camp to different degrees, but second torn ACL last October. He continues to kind of inch his way back. Here's what Freeman said about Raridan today.
Still progressing. He probably, I doubt it, he'll be back this week. Not 100% sure, but I doubt it, he'll be back. It's progression. And when you come off your second ACL, right, it can be physical and mental. And that is something that until he physically feels 100% and mentally feels like he's ready to go, you can't push that guy to get on the field. And so we're working with him to physically make sure that he's feeling like he's 100%, and then mentally you feel capable that you won't go out and re-injure yourself.
So what do you think, Eli Raridan? You like when you hear that, do you think we see him even next week, or you think it's going to be even farther down the line, Vince?
If they're not confident bringing him back for Central Michigan, then I would wait until after Ohio State. Ohio State's not the game where you want to debut him, in my personal opinion. I think you wait at that. If he's not, like I said, if he's not ready this week, I want to at least get his feet wet before you throw him in on a night game against Ohio State where the blood pressure's flowing, the nerves are, you know what I mean? Like, that is not where I want him to test out his twice repaired ACL. Okay. And so I would wait. Personally, I don't think he's the difference maker in this game. He's a great player, but I don't think he's a difference maker. Like, man, if we don't get him back, Notre Dame has no chance of winning. Like, I don't see it being that case. Now, if you wait until he's absolutely 100% healthy, maybe he's a bit of a difference maker against Clemson. Maybe he's a bit of a difference maker against USC. I don't know that a not 100% Eli Raridan is a difference maker against Ohio State.
Yeah, concur. Concur. Chi-Town asking about Devin Ford. We mentioned him a second ago. He is looking like he's going to play this week. So we shall see. And again, that is a very competitive running back room. So what that role looks, he wasn't getting a ton of carries anyway. Kickoff return was his biggest contribution. So we'll see if that's where he kind of still ends up, if he is going to be back this week.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll have the I guess we probably won't get a depth, we won't. We got a depth chart today. There are no changes from last week, but
no surprise.
Again, yeah. All righty, Vince. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Is it already time?
It is.
Woo! Let's go.
It's for almost an hour already. I guess not an hour. We were a little bit delayed getting started.
45 minutes. That's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad at all. So Tobias Merriweather, we got some receiver questions. Tobias Merriweather had the 45-yard catch Saturday, his only catch of the game Saturday. He now has 3 catches for 50 yards this season. I asked Marcus Freeman today about how the ball is being distributed amongst his wide receivers. Like, do you need a number 1 guy? Are you happy with the ball? Just, basically the open guy gets the ball. Here's what Marcus Freeman said.
I love what we're doing, the ability to spread the ball out. Last year, you look at almost the Michael Mayer effect, right? It was, hey, if Michael Mayer single coverage, you're going to Michael Mayer. I think the ability for us to really go through a progression, it really puts the defense at a disadvantage because you can't just double cover one guy. And that's the great thing about the weapons we have at tight end, at wide receiver, in the back, but we're using our backs too in the pass game. We're able to go through a progression and not just say this is the go-to guy. And I think that's a reflection of how you see the ball being spread around. And so you're going to be the guy when the ball comes your way, but you always have to anticipate the ball's coming your way. And I think that's the beautiful part about how we're playing offensively right now, is that everybody and anybody on any play has a chance to get the ball thrown their way.
Anybody has a chance to get the ball thrown their way on any given play. So, Vince, are you happy with where the receivers are, the way the ball is being distributed, as well as Tobias Merriweather, where he is right now?
I would love for Tobias Merriweather to be more productive. I'm not going to lie. I would love it.
Uh-huh.
And I said something about Notre Dame having a bunch of number 2 receivers, and they don't need a number 1 with the way things are going at the moment. Sam Hartman's going to find the open man. The open man's going to make a play. And I got a look from Brian when I said that. And I understand what he's saying. I totally understand where he's coming from. I would love for someone to step up and be a number 1 guy, right? But And they're going to need plays out of the wide receivers against the big 3. They're going to need plays from the wide receiving core. There's no doubt about it. It's just a matter of, is it going to be the same guy every time? Is it going to be a different guy every time? I personally, when it comes to wide receiver, I personally like depth. Then the question from Anthony is would you prefer 1 elite receiver or 5 or 6 good receivers? No, I'd like 5 or 6 great receivers and not an elite receiver. I don't want a bunch of good guys. I want a bunch of great guys. They're going to make each other better and are going to give defensive coordinators fits. That's what I want. And again, I would love Tobias to step up and be a dude. I would love that. I would love Thomas to step up and be the dude, right? But right now, they haven't needed that yet. We're not at a place where this team has needed that from the wide receivers. They're going to be eventually. In about a week and a half, they sure are. And somebody's going to have to step up.
So you think they really need like that one go-to guy?
I think one guy is going to have to end up being a go-to guy in the big games. I don't know that they need one all season.
See, I don't think so. Like I still go back to that New England Patriots model, especially early on. Not necessarily late New England Patriots when they had Edelman and Gronk and those, because those guys were obviously the guys that were getting the majority of the balls. But like David Givens helped remember David Givens, early 2000s Notre Dame receiver? He helped the Patriots win a Super Bowl, like back in those Troy Brown days, when week to week, who was going to get the ball was just dependent on who was open and what the game plan looked like. And that's like, I think it's a positive thing that the way this thing is starting to evolve, like now you do have the tight ends involved. And the more the tight ends are involved, the more that's just going to present more opportunities for these other receivers as the games roll on. Look how wide open Chris Tyree was on that play where he had his big catch, 40 plus yards. Like, I guess Merriweather's was 45 yards and Chris Tyree's was what? It was longer than that. 40, it was 65 yards. 65, so yeah, but look how wide open he was on that play. It's because, as Marcus Freeman said, you can only cover so many guys when you've got this many guys who could, and for so long when you've got this many guys who can be weapons. So I think everyone would like to see Tobias Merriweather be a bigger role, but like I envisioned more than 1 or 2 catches a game for Tobias Merriweather, but I also envisioned something like what we saw against North Carolina State Saturday, where like when he does get his hands on the ball, it's a 20 to 30 or 40 yard catch because he's making plays downfield because that's what he can do. So like I would definitely like to see him be more involved going forward, but I'm not going to get caught up in where the balls are going as long as guys are still making catches and Sam Hartman's, making clean throws and not turning the ball over.
I think facilitate, inform says it great. He said the wide receivers always make those plays when needed so far. And they have. They have made those plays so far this year. Anytime a play needed to be made, the wide receivers have made the play, right? And so as long as that keeps happening, I'm cool with it. I really am. I don't necessarily care if they have a number one guy as long as the cast of characters is still getting the job done. How about that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It can be a committee approach as long as the committee is getting it done. And so far they are, like Jaden Greathouse is still having a really nice freshman season, even though he's not making catches in bunches, in volume. He's still making key catches. And that was like give it to Tobias because, it was not like he was wide open on that play. Right. He had to go like little skinny post and he turned it into something long. He used his ability, made the catch. And, he had that drop on the very first target of the season. But when the balls have come his way, they haven't come his way as much as probably he would still like and as much as other people would like. But when the balls are coming his way, he's making the catches now. And he is contributing as a blocker as well. So I'm not going to sweat whether or not it's Tobias Merriweather as long as who it is. As long as everybody's doing the job. I think it's great. I think it's only going to benefit everyone over the course of the season. Fill in the blank. The pass breakup Xavier Watts had against NC State was blank.
One of the most athletic plays I've ever seen from a safety. We've seen fast with we've seen that kind of movement in the back there, but to go up and over and still get your arm in there to break it up without interfering. That's an incredible athlete making a play right there.
It was like Matrix stuff, like Matrix level.
Like, amazing.
Because the way they were talking about it, like you saw the play live and I think the camera angle was like, you see him kind of coming from behind.
Right.
And then they're talking about it and they're like, how is this not pass interference? And then they show it and literally it's like Matrix. He's just coming over the top and he swats it away. It was one of the most athletic plays. And then didn't he do kind of like sheath the sword kind of thing?
I got yelled at for that. I was told it was the seat belt. He was putting on a seat belt. I'm like, who puts on a seat belt with two hands? Who does that?
I am very safety conscious. I'm Xavier Watts.
Yeah, that seemed weird. They claim it's a celebration that's been done by a bunch. I don't know.
Kids buckle up at home.
Yeah, that seemed weird to me. But I'm actually looking back on it with the way the refs called the game. I'm actually surprised that they didn't call that pass interference because live it looked like it, but the replay clearly shows that it wasn't. And so we are allowed to be excited about that now because it wasn't the 11th penalty on Notre Dame.
Couple super chats I want to get to here. One from Matt 2011 GT. It is so nice to be complaining about having a committee at running back and receiver. Thanks for the show. You're welcome for the show, and thanks for the super chat. But you're right. Like, it is like, think of where this program was just a year ago with the receivers and really 2 years ago with the running backs. And now the conversation is who's going to catch the balls, who's going to get the reps. It's a lot different.
First world problems, that's for sure.
Yep. Joseph, jumping ahead, is the Notre Dame defensive line ready for Ohio State? I believe their secondary is ready.
Yeah, I think the defensive line is playing great right now. I think Howard Cross played like an absolute man. I think Riley Mills was getting his turns in the backfield. I think that Jean-Baptiste played really, really well. I thought Nana had his shining moments as well. I think, Josh Burnham is going to play well in that game. Yeah, I think the defensive line is going to be just fine. It's how they mix in with the linebackers and all that. I'm not a huge fan of Ohio State's offensive line, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think the defensive line is going to absolutely hold their own in that game. I'm not worried about the defensive line at all.
Yeah, I think it's probably the other side where the conversation is going to be had.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Andrew wants to know, can we get Tyree a jet sweep or a screen?
Oh, Andrew, give it some time, okay? We don't want to show everybody everything that Chris Tyree can do, all right? I think eventually they will get to that. I do. I think they will get to that. We've seen him in motion. We've seen him do a couple of things of that ilk, and I think we can all safely say that the playbook has not been completely emptied as of September 11th. I think September 23rd, you're going to see some wrinkles. So just be waiting for it. Just wait.
G-Baby, is Clemson still considered the big three, or is it Duke now?
No, it is not Duke now. It is still Clemson, and it's going to still be Clemson for a little while because, look, Duke's a good team, but I'm sorry. Yes, they beat them. I get that, but they have not replaced Clemson as a big three. Okay.
There's still 2 months to go. A lot of things can change.
Let's put it this way. Are you more nervous about going into Duke and playing in that environment or going into Clemson and playing in that environment? If we're going to talk about environments like with NC State.
Are we going to have to hear about the Duke environment?
There is no Duke environment. This is not Cameron Indoor, right? They're not playing the football game with all the wood paneling around it. Like I'm sorry. That doesn't exist. Okay. So Clemson is still ahead of Duke for me. Sorry.
David says, if Kaiser slides over to JD's position, should the staff decide to sit JD, who takes Jack's position?
Well, it's been Harper because they've been pretty much running all nickel. So that's kind of been the issue.
Which is why you really haven't seen that much of Jack Kaiser to begin with. And Maris Leofau was, he played a really good game Saturday as well.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt. And it would just be, they would play more nickel. I mean, that would be what would happen. And Harper would essentially be getting that.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Lee Corso said on College Game Day Saturday that Sam Hartman will be a Heisman Trophy finalist.
Wow. He said something like relatively credible. That's amazing. I'm shocked by the fact that was actually uttered on that set, to be honest with you. So it's shocking to me that Lee Corso said that on College Game Day, Sam Hartman will be a Heisman finalist, because it feels like Notre Dame and Sam Hartman and anybody else that wears a golden helmet has been completely forgotten about on the national stage, even though they're ranked the number 9 team in the country.
Well, I mean, they did play Tennessee State 2 weeks ago, so it was kind of hard to find anything real for them to talk about this week, other than
I understand.
Give them credit that they even talked about Notre Dame, and Corso brought up Sam Hartman as a Heisman finalist.
There's been plenty of teams that have been playing cupcakes so far in this game, or in this season, and they're still getting talked about. So, just saying.
Oh, my God, Vince. Come on.
I'm just saying.
Who?
Name some top 10 teams.
Okay.
I mean,
so you can't give me an example. You're just
can go over it, I suppose.
You're just gonna go bias right away.
How about Ohio State?
Who's anybody talking about with Ohio State? If anything, people are talking about how unspectacular Ohio State has looked.
Oh, we've been getting inundated with Ohio State nonsense because of their wide receiver and core and all this other crap. Yeah, they got really good wide receivers. You should be talking about them. But, I mean, that was just the first one off the top of my head. I'm going through, how about Michigan? They talk about Michigan all the time. I'm seeing that J.J. McCarthy is a friggin' Heisman Trophy candidate, and he's basically playing against a bunch of JV teams. And he's wearing a shirt that says, "Free my head coach." Like, come on, give me a break.
Yeah. I was surprised, not surprised. We got the Sam Hartman wears a necklace with his rib on it in the pregame Saturday. Like, you knew that was going to happen the first time ESPN got a game. But to the Lee Corso thing, I was a little bit shocked to hear him come out like this early and start talking about Hartman as a Heisman finalist. But look at where he is right now. It starts with next week, though, really, is what it does. It starts with Ohio State. It's going to be in prime time. There are going to be a lot of eyeballs watching that game. If Sam Hartman comes out of that game with, even well, I'm not going to go there. If Sam Hartman comes out of that game, he's in good shape. He's going to vault himself into the middle of that conversation. Like right now, I'd put Shedeur Sanders in front of the pack. I don't know that Vegas still has him at the top of the pack. They've got Caleb Williams, I think, still there at the top of the heap, but Shedeur Sanders has definitely vaulted himself. And if Shedeur Sanders can get into that conversation, the quarterback at Notre Dame is going to be in that conversation if things keep going the way they're going right now.
I mean, he's been the most dynamic player in college football, and I still find it ridiculous that Caleb Williams is still the favorite in Vegas. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He's never going to win it a second time. That'll never happen, but they're still saying that he's the favorite to win it. Like, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. Former Notre Dame and current Pittsburgh Panther quarterback Phil Jurkovec said this about Pitt fans booing his team in Saturday's loss to Cincinnati. Now, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Quote, "I think if you're a grown bleep man booing in the stadium, it's pathetic, but we have to play better." End quote. So what do you think, Vince?
I think that you left out some really good parts of what he was saying in that particular press conference. That's for sure.
Oh, did I miss some other stuff?
He talked about how he loves going on the road, and he would rather play on the road than in front of the Pittsburgh fans and all this other. He really dug himself a giant hole. Like, he
really ingratiating yourself to the home crowd there.
He may be one of the most. He may be, and this goes back years with him. He may be one of the most tone deaf individuals I've ever been around when it comes to college football. Like, he just doesn't get it, right? I mean, it's hilarious, frankly, and that's why we keep talking about it, because he just keeps saying the dumbest stuff. Last year when he was talking about Notre Dame and how, all the stuff about the Irish, the cultural appropriation, all of that ridiculousness, and a grown man boo. That's who's in the stands, dude. Like, who do you think is booing people? Adults. And you've been in college for 5 or 6 years. You're an adult too. You're a grown man too. So you need to have a little less. Like, he's got the thinnest skin of any quarterback I've ever seen.
And again, I realized everyone, wanted to blame his whole situation on the coaching staff here, and that's why he left and whatever else. But man, sometimes you got to look in the mirror. Like, just the quote alone that I just read, leave out the first sentence and say we have to play better. And that's it.
Right.
That's it. That's all you got to say. he went home after going to Boston. He went home to play for his hometown, Pitt Panthers, in his final go round. And there's an expectation. They've actually been a better program the last couple of years. I wasn't completely buying all the hype around him and everything else coming into this year, but you got to look in the mirror, I think, and that's what it's all about. Like John was just saying, you shouldn't boo your home team. It's like, look,
that's not a rule.
You're talking about working class Pittsburgh, man. Like they're buying tickets to go see that garbage. Pitt was a home favorite against Cincinnati in that game, and they played awful, and he played awful. You got to play better, and you got to face the music sometimes. And it's just at no point in Phil Jurkovic's college career have I seen him actually stand up and accept any real blame in any of this. Like that whole blue gold game, that first blue gold game here at Notre Dame, when he wasn't able to run. Ooh, boo-hoo. They played touch football, and Phil Jurkovic wasn't able to run the ball.
Still complaining.
And he was so he could literally barely talk. He was so upset afterwards because he didn't get to run in a blue gold game because the coaches didn't want him to get tackled. Like, get over it. Be a big boy, put on your big boy pants and play big boy football. That's what it's all about. You're in Pittsburgh. They're not going to forgive anybody. I'm sorry.
Right. Exactly. And here's a where is it? Okay, here we go. Sunday was worse. Steelers got the boo birds too. Like,
that's right.
It's not just for you, buddy. And
against a much better team.
Steiny says
comparatively.
Bears fans were booing before halftime, but that's normal. I mean, I was just gonna say I'm a Bears fan. I was booing from my couch in the basement at the Bears game that I was attempting to watch yesterday afternoon. Like that was a pathetic display of football as well. And so how are you supposed to express your displeasure with what's going on? You're a fan. You either cheer or you boo. Boo.
Right.
Like I don't
and
get
look,
over it, man.
Let's be honest. You can say, well, they're college kids and all that. I mean, Phil Jurkovic is what? He's just a little bit younger than Sam Hartman at this
point.
Not
much.
So it's not like he's young. And NIL, they're out there making money now, right? Like they're making more money than the people who are buying the tickets, a lot of them. So
that's a really good point in college football too.
I think everybody's fair game at this point.
The only place I would boo is like high school and below. Like that's the only place where I'm not going to boo. College and up there. College and up, you're fair game, man. You're fair game.
You're playing Power 5 big boy football.
Absolutely.
Sorry. Texas knocked off Alabama in Tuscaloosa Saturday night. Vince, is Texas back?
Oh, not after one game. No, they're not back. They played really well. They played one of the best games I've ever seen a Texas team play. Quinn Ewers made the big plays when he needed to. He's out there, he's in the locker room smoking a cigar afterwards. I mean, he's living the life. Now, that's the big question. Are their heads a little bit too big down there in Texas? Now, everything's bigger in Texas. Are their heads a little too big at this point? We're going to have to wait and see how the season plays out. But no, they're going to have to play a few more games before I think we all say that they're back because, guess who else beat Alabama last year? Brian Kelly. Just saying.
Talk to me after September 30th, Vince. Do you know what September 30th is, Vince?
I don't. Who are they playing?
It's not just the day that Notre Dame goes to Duke to play in that hostile environment at Duke.
One of the big three.
As Tyler says, the Longhorns have to play the Jayhawks. And just wait until the Jayhawks come to town.
That's all it is.
That is the game that and actually it'll be in Austin this year. So looking forward to that. I'm looking forward, not looking forward. I think it's going to be a pretty competitive game. I'm really looking forward. They've got Wyoming and Baylor in the meantime. They've got Oklahoma. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. Okay. You won one game.
Yeah,
we've seen Texas win some games before. Let's see them have a season. I'm not willing to say that they're back quite yet. I mean, it's a massive win, obviously, considering where the program has been. And like, if you kind of juxtapose, like Alabama's rise started with that win over Texas all those years ago, and what all that different stuff. But hey, it's one win at the end of the day. Early in the season.
It's a win. I'm proud of them. That's great. Here's the deal. Notre Dame and Texas are synonymous with the blank is back, right? We've seen it 100 times for Notre Dame. We've seen it 100 times for Texas, and it has yet to be true. It has yet to be true for either team. And so until it becomes true for one of these teams, I'm not a believer. Not a believer.
Rock chalk, Vince. Rock chalk.
I don't have anything to show you. It's got a bunch of junk sitting around.
September 30th. As long as they cover, I'll be fairly happy.
That's fair.
Kansas beat them in Austin a couple of years ago, and that was when Kansas was still, neither one of them were that, but people were trying to make Texas back at that point. I hope it lives up to it. I hope it's a good game. That's what I'm hoping for. All right. That is going to do it for tonight. Don't forget, again, Reggie Brooks is going to be with us at the start of tomorrow's show, and he's going to be live as well. It will not be a recorded interview. Oh, Reggie's going to be live.
Okay.
So if you're in the chat live, have a chance to throw some questions Reggie's way. But again, we're going to talk Notre Dame running backs. We're going to talk the offense, Marcus Freeman, the whole works. I'm really
one thing you can count Reggie for is he's dialed into this team. He is always dialed into the current team. When, in the old show that I used to do over at WSB2, we used to talk to all the old players. And it was amazing how many of those players had no clue what was going on at Notre Dame in the present day. Reggie knows what's going on in the present day.
Reggie keeps up.
Yes, he does.
He's still hosting post-game show. Reggie and I used to host the post-game show together for a few years after Jack moved on. Jack Nolan moved on to other things. Reggie and I did that show together for a while. We always had a good time, sometimes late into the midnight, into the wee hours of the night after those night games. There's right.
Great stories in there.
We'll be back tomorrow with Reg. Jess will be back as well with some of the best things that he saw in Saturday's win over North Carolina State. And, of course, rapid fire as well. G-Baby, I'm glad we've got this groundswell of Kansas Jayhawk support. They took care of Illinois Friday night, and that was actually kind of fun, not having anything Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
Kansas, Illinois, even though, as we've talked about, we'd rather just see high school football and not college, but we had some Kansas versus Illinois, so that was fun, even though I didn't really care for the black uniforms. I don't know if you saw any of that.
I did. I still don't understand the black, but whatever.
They loved them.
Yeah, okay.
TD4ND, yes, we will have some whiteboard tomorrow. Jess will bring the whiteboard after Reggie Brooks. So it'll go Reggie, whiteboard, rapid fire. That's on tomorrow's show. Going to be fun.
Mic drop.
All right, hit the like button on your way out. And, of course, the friendly always reminder to subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast platforms. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. IB Nation Sports Talk.